Good morning, David here in England. Just wanted to give you a brief history lesson on Islam. Yes, Islam, the religion of peace, that's what they say, isn't it? Or the ideology of peace. There are many that don't consider it a proper religion at all, because it was founded in 627 AD when the Prophet of Islam, that M fella, can't name him I don't think, it's recorded in the Quran and numerous other places that his first looting, slave-taking raid was here, just around Medina here. There we go, just there. And it might shock you to find out that he was a slave dealer and a slave keeper himself. And as we see on the date, this was in 627 AD. And in 750 AD, he took all this. He was right into Afghanistan, all the Istans, which you can barely pronounce, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Pakistan. As we see, he was into Western India, and the bloodletting in Western India was horrendous. We do say around about 50 or 60 million civilians were killed, executed, just in this part of India, because it was so, well, heavily populated. And as we see, all these lands, obviously the Holy Lands here, Jerusalem, Lebanon, all these lands, all the way around here, all Spain, obviously, round about this time, they were all Christianised. Obviously different brands of Christianity. We had the Catholic Church from Rome, we had another brand of Christianity around about Constantinople, around here. This whole, the Armenian Christians in Turkey, these were treated terribly by the Turkish Empire, the Turkish Nazi Empire in 1915. 1.5 million Christians were sadistically tortured and beheaded and machine gunned, and kids, women, the lot were marched across deserts. Google that, the Armenian massacre, Armenian genocide, 1915. There's pictures still on there, shockingly, of Turkish soldiers stood there with rifles, posing by 6 severed Christian heads. That's how dirty and horrible we are. And in this ideology, all non-members of the ideology are, of course, dirty kuffar, are perverts, the lowliest of beasts. They're basically talked about like mice or snakes or rats, probably they would use. I'm using an arrowhead because it's quite appropriate really, because as we know, and as Winston Churchill and many other people noted, Islam was born from the sword and propagated using the sword. If you look at the Saudi Arabian flag and the ISIS flag, the original one, it has a sword on it because it's all to do with warfare, terrorism and bloodletting and slave taking. And the Prophet of Islam, as we know, had a peculiar liking for children. I'll just leave it at that, shall I? Yes, all these children, all these poor children that were taken, especially lighter skinned children, blue-eyed children, green-eyed children from around here, and Spain especially, they were very valuable. You can imagine, you know, at no time before this could you buy a child to molest or rape. You know, this is atrocious under Christianity, obviously. And we talk about the Crusaders. Well, there was one instance when they recaptured Jerusalem after it had been occupied for 600 years by the Ottoman Turks from here. These were notoriously cruel. As I say, what we did with the Armenians was very bad. They used to regularly, for fun, impale Christians through their anus with a huge spike, like so, straight through the body. And Kazouk, K-H-A-Z-O-U-K, Google it. So basically, as we say, he had the first looting raids, which was Banu Qurayza, closely followed by the attack on Kayabar, another Jewish village. It was Jewish around here, you see, but it was Christian dominated by far, and obviously Jews in the Holy Land, but it was Christian dominated. It was all Christianised by then. And this third massacre in the Quran is called Banu, the little village was called Banu Mustalik. At the Banu Qurayza, was it? Oh no, I beg your pardon. At Kayabar, the second massacre, the Jewish leader Huya, I can't hardly pronounce it, Huya. It's recorded quite well in the Quran that he was wearing a pink ornate gown with sequins on, and he'd made little slits, little tears, in case it was taken off him. But of course, when they found out where the booty of the village was, they beheaded him just the same at Banu Qurayza. Yeah, as we see, Egypt was all Christian at one stage. You know, all these countries, you know, Tunisia, Morocco, all these countries, Algeria was never fully Christianised. But as we see, in under 100 years, they were in France, in southern France. And they were only stopped at the Battle of Tours in 727 or 732 AD. Look it up. Yep, a load of French and German mercenaries got loads of gold off the Pope to stop them right there in the Champagne region of France. And their plans, even way back, they knew about Sweden, they knew about these cold, rich countries, and their plans, even back in kind of just after the Prophet's day, was to go as far as Sweden up here. They had their eye on all this. And our ex-Prime Minister and wartime hero, Winston Churchill, had a great deal to say about this, because he served as a soldier in Sudan during unrest against the British Empire, and he had a lot to say about it. For instance, he said there's a man filled with Sharia, filled with Islamic fever, you know, this dominating, looting, killing fever, was just like a dog filled with rabies, hydrophobia, called that. Also, he said, here we are, I mean, on about Sharia and on about this madness that possesses them, you know, above the people of all other creeds, to this form of madness, in the moment of the fruits of patient toil, the prospects of material prosperity, the fear of death itself is flung aside. The more emotional pathans are powerless to resist. All rational considerations are forgotten. Seizing their weapons, they become ghazis, as dangerous, as sensible as mad dogs, fit only to be treated as such. That's how Winston Churchill found them. You had to treat them like mad dogs. It says how full of this fever, this death-defying fever, they could even beat the British squares. So when you talk about religion of peace, bear in mind it was first started for gain, for envy, because he greatly envied these Jewish tribes, because his job, the Prophet, was an illiterate. And all the people from around this area used to laugh at him. A bit like how the Poles were laughed at years ago. Wrongly, quite wrongly, of course. But, yes, and he was a complete racist. He said that black men were only fit for hard labour, slavery, castration. And, as you can imagine, before the British and the Americans got involved in the slave trade to the Americas, they traipsed them across vast areas from Africa. If they refused to walk or they were too weak, they used to smash their skulls in. Scotsman David Livingstone told us all about this. He found the bodies of all these black people where these Muslim slavers had smashed their skulls in. So when you're talking about the religion of peace, just bear in mind it was born from the sword, propagated with the sword, as Winston Churchill said, and it continues via the sword. They have no respect for Christianity, for Hinduism, for Sikhism. It's purely, you know, if one of these people, let's say, shall we say, kills a few innocent people on say, a Wednesday, as soon as he goes to the mosque, all his sins are forgiven. How good is that? There's none of this moral compass or guilt that we have in Western societies. Oh no, none of that. None of that do the right thing like Jesus did. No, it's purely a selfish, greedy, grasping, thieving, slave-taking barbarians ideology. And their holy book, that Q book, was only written 200 years after this paedophile mass murderer died. Really was. 200 years after he died. So there's some truth in it, and there's some good information about his massacres and his behaviour with children and his murders and what have you, and his assassinations, but there's a great deal been left out. So he was a great deal worse than even their book says, and that is bad. I mean, he was certainly far worse than Stalin or Adolf Hitler. It's far worse than Negan from The Walking Dead, who is plainly modelled on Old Mo.